Today we're gonna be doing some serious surgery on the S14.
Time to up my car.
We're doing the Overfender cut.
In terms of aesthetic procedures for your car, this one is pretty invasive. It involves going above the wheel arch, marking a line, cutting, and then taking the metal wheel liner, bending it up in pie cuts, and welding it, seam sealing it, and priming it. So yeah, it's intense, it's scary, but I have all the tools for the job. I feel properly equipped to do it. I've done my research, and fingers crossed I don't mess up.
The most common mistake that people make whenever they're doing an Overfender cut on their cars is they just simply cut too much. And I've seen plenty of videos where people cut and they're like, oh my God, what have I done? What do I do? And that's what makes this such an intimidating task.
When you cut too much material, that inner wheel liner can only bend up so much. So suddenly you have a gap and you have to start hammering the rest of the quarter panel, and it can get ugly fast. To really get an accurate mark of where we're gonna be cutting, I'm gonna be using this 3M 1/4 inch tape, as opposed to cutting out a bunch of strips of these and sort of like making a jagged edge of where I'm gonna be cutting. I wanna be super precise. I'm probably gonna be spending 30 minutes to an hour marking the cut.
Also, another thing that I think is mandatory when you're doing an Overfender cut is a welder. If you don't weld, find a friend that welds. If you don't have a friend that welds, go on Facebook Marketplace and find a mobile welder with good reviews. You want to make sure that after you're done extending the wheel arch for the Overfenders, that opening is properly sealed. I've seen people do some pretty suspect stuff, like use duct tape, which I definitely do not recommend. I've seen people bend the metal up and then self-tap some screws in, which is better, but still not recommended. And I've seen people even just like leave the gap, which don't do. After you're done welding, it's imperative that you treat the back side of your welds with some sort of rust inhibitor, whether that's Por 15, which is a great paint, you just gotta coat your welds and make sure that they don't rust. And I also recommend using a cavity wax in the area. Overall, I'm happy with how the driver's side turned out, but there are some adjustments that I'm gonna make for the passenger side. The first being, I need to be less aggressive with how far in the relief cuts are on the wheel well. This resulted in areas that I had to fill in with sheet metal, and I'd really not like to do that for the other side. Another thing that I learned when doing the driver's side is that the cutoff wheel is great for the top of the arch whenever you're making the initial like crescent moon cut, but the further you get to the bottom, the pieces of metal from the wheel well and the skin of the quarter panel are so close that it's easy to cut through them, and then you have a lot more work on your hands. So, enough talking. Let's take this Overfender off and get to marking. Oh, okay. That was holding on for dear life. So first things first, we need to mark where we're gonna cut. What I am worried about is the proximity to the gas cap area. So we gotta be extra careful with that.
All right, found my safety goggles. Time to up my car. Now that is a clean cut. So much better than the large cutoff wheel on the angle grinder. So let's keep on moving our way down, because I think the area that's gonna make the biggest difference is right down here. So the top portion of the arch has been cut. I did a hard cutoff right here at the rear of the quarter panel, so that way I can still put rib nuts in this section for the rear bumper. And the same applies for the front section as well. Right on the money. Literally right on the little panel bond line. Perfect, that's gonna give us a lot to work with. Dude, that is perfect! Oh my God. That is literally as good as it gets, man. It's super straight. We have like
as much material to work with here as possible, bending it up. These corners are all intact so that the metal can be bent and welded. It's perfect. I'm super happy we didn't get too close to here. So right now, let's make a couple relief cuts, and we're gonna go a lot shallower than before. And we're also gonna be using the saw instead of the angle grinder so that our lines and our cuts are very thin. But before I get too ahead of myself and before we start making relief cuts and bending the metal up, we're gonna wanna take a flapper disc and prep the surface so that we're gonna have a nice area to weld to. So we got our surface ground down to bare metal. We're almost ready to start welding. I went into these corners with a razor blade to remove some panel bond and wiped everything down with some acetone as well. This little guy sits in there. I think it's like some sort of vibration dampener or sound deadening. Well, anyway, on the other side, it lit on fire when I was welding, and it was very dramatic and awful, and I had to put it out with almond milk. The car caught on fire from the welding, and all I had was some almond milk. Oh my God. Dude. There's almond milk everywhere. So we went ahead and got this guy out. All right, let's start beating the out of this. Oh, here we go. All right, let's start making some relief cuts, making sure we don't go too deep, and that should get us where we need to be. So, status update. I had to end up making a couple more relief cuts, and unfortunately the metal is beginning to tear. And hopefully, just like this piece right here, once the metal is pushed up, this tear extends past where I'm gonna be cutting, so it should be seamless. So what I'm gonna do is I have my trusty, dusty Harbor Freight MIG welder. I'm gonna tack the little pieces that are being held up by the ram and then move along. So we finished bending all the metal up, creating the new arch. So this side cooperated with me well. You can see a little opening there that I can just fill with some weld. But then as we go to this side, the metal could only stretch so much. So next what we're gonna do is trim all these tabs off, begin welding the entirety of the arch, and then go from the backside with some sheet metal and fill those holes. All right, we're getting close to the finish line here. So these cuts that I pointed out before, I ended up just filling them with weld and building a ledge inside the panel and then carrying it through. But for these guys, let's go ahead and cut some sheet metal, stick it to the backside with a magnet and crank that welder up so we can just melt it together and then be ready for that seam sealer. Hey, yo, talk to me nice, metal, come on. Just these little bits of metal welded in, and we're Gucci guilty. Let's go inside the panel and get it placed. I'm pretty satisfied with this, so let's go ahead and get the welder back out, seal this all back up.
Well, it looks like we're all sealed up. No more holes in this sucker. Alrighty. Now I'm gonna be using this wire brush to clean up the surface for the seam sealer. And I'm just gonna load it up. Before any of y'all wild out, this is bare metal seam sealer. Bare metal seam sealer. You put it on bare metal. End of the video review. So, we got a lot of work done today. I'm super satisfied with how the Overfender cut turned out, and it feels amazing too. I'm able to grab it from the wheel arch and shake the entire car. And I ended up going and treating the backside of the welds as well with some of that Pour 15, so we're protected both inside and out. So, the next step is the exterior of the quarter panel is gonna be coated in epoxy-based primer. We're gonna scuff it up and put Raptor liner on it, which is a really, really strong truck bed coating, so that anywhere underneath the Overfender is gonna be safe from the elements, no matter what. So, next video, we are finally gonna be attaching the Overfenders, the side skirts, and the rear bumper. And speaking of attaching things, your boy got his first sponsor. That's right, Z-Spec Design. Z-Spec is the best of automotive dress-up hardware. From underneath the hood to wide body hardware, they have everything. Aluminum, titanium, well nuts, riv nuts. They'll get you right. So next video is gonna be a banger. This car is gonna start looking wildly different very, very quickly. So make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you haven't already, check me out on TikTok. It's at VIP_LS400. I want to be a famous YouTuber. I want to have swag. I want to have internet drama. I want to have a compound. I want to have cool friends with inside jokes. I want to be different. I want to act different. I want people to be like, why are you acting so brand new? That's what I want. Not really. Just kind of want to fill a void, you know? Anyway, love you guys so much. Peace out.